Donald Trump delivered a speech in Waunakee, Wisconsin, aimed at mobilizing his supporters and preparing for the upcoming elections. This speech was a classic example of his oratory style, emotional delivery, harsh criticism of opponents, and the use of patriotic themes to strengthen the sense of unity and attract new voters. Let's take a closer look at this speech, its strategy, and the rhetorical techniques used. 1. Overall structure and style of the speech. Donald Trump's speech in Waunakee was constructed in a style typical of him, including elements of a show, appeals to emotional connection with the audience, and the use of imagery designed to create a sense of threat and the need for action. Let's first consider some key aspects of his delivery. Emotional introduction. Trump began with the patriotic song "God Bless the USA," immediately setting an emotional tone and enhancing the sense of national pride among the audience. This is a typical tactic to quickly involve the audience in a shared experience and strengthen their identification with the speaker. Flexible use of language. His speech often featured simple, memorable phrases and slogans that helped the audience tune into him. This makes his speech accessible and comprehensible to a broad audience, which is a strong point of his oratory skill. 2. Thematic analysis. A. Patriotism and national pride. The primary focus of the speech was on patriotism, which allowed him to establish a strong emotional bond with his supporters. He actively used symbols of America, such as the Golden Age, songs, and ideas of national power and greatness. This helped convey the message that the current state of the country is a deviation from the ideals to which it should strive, and that only his leadership could return America to its former greatness. Evaluation. The theme of patriotism is very effectively used to strengthen his base of support and create a sense of external threat that must be eliminated. This helps unite the audience around a specific goal. B. Criticism of the current administration. A central element of the speech was sharp criticism of the administration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Trump characterized them as weak and incompetent leaders, focusing on issues related to migration, foreign policy, and the economy. His rhetoric aimed to delegitimize their policies and create the impression that the country needs strong leadership. Strategy. Trump often uses techniques to delegitimize his opponents, portraying them as a weak link in contrast to his strong image. He emphasizes the incompetence of the current leadership, creating a context for presenting himself as an experienced and decisive leader. C. The migration crisis. Trump heavily used the issue of migration as an external enemy threatening the welfare and security of Americans. He argued that current migration policies lead to increased crime and the destruction of the social fabric of the country. The idea that migrants are criminals and terrorists is frequently mentioned, which heightens fear and mobilizes support based on negative perceptions of others. Evaluation. This element of rhetoric is extremely popular among his core supporters, as it addresses people's fears and anxieties. Trump builds a narrative of us versus them, which is psychologically powerful and creates a sense of unity in the face of a perceived threat. However, this strategy is subject to criticism for its excessive simplification and tendency to demonize migrants. 3. Rhetorical techniques and means of influence. A. Use of anecdotes and personal stories. Trump uses numerous anecdotes and personal stories to make his speech more vivid and accessible. He talks about interactions with the military, negotiations with foreign leaders, and jokes about his experiences and everyday situations. This not only entertains the audience, but also makes his image more relatable and human. Effectiveness. Such stories work as a means of humanizing the politician, allowing him to be closer to the audience and increasing trust. Moreover, personal anecdotes help create the illusion that listeners have access to the inner circle, a powerful element of emotional influence. B. Rhetoric of fear. Part of Trump's strategy was to intensify the fear of the future if his opponents were to win. He spoke of the possibility of World War III, catastrophic consequences if Biden and Harris remain in power, and threats from migration. The use of fear-based language helps reinforce the belief in the need for change and motivates people to vote. Evaluation. This technique helps create a sense of urgency that action must be taken immediately. The rhetoric of fear motivates action, which is important in the run-up to elections. However, such an approach also causes polarization and creates a deep divide in society, which could have long-term negative consequences. See contrast of before and after. Trump frequently refers to the achievements of his first term as president, emphasizing economic growth, the absence of major international conflicts, and security, and contrasts these with the failures of the Biden administration. He creates a narrative in which his administration represents a time of success, while the current situation is one of decline. Analysis. Contrasting is a very powerful rhetorical tool, especially when comparing the past and present. It evokes nostalgia in the audience and a desire to return to the better times, increasing the likelihood of their support in the upcoming elections. 4. Strategy for gaining support. A. Calls to action. Trump repeatedly urged his supporters to actively participate in the elections, register to vote, and mobilize others. He emphasized the importance of the upcoming elections, calling them the most important in history. This helps set the audience up for the idea of an exceptional moment and the need for each individual to participate. Effectiveness. Mobilization appeals are often found in Trump's speeches, and they help create a sense of responsibility for the future of the country. This is especially important for his supporters to feel their significance and involvement in the movement. B. Sense of elitism and exclusivity. Creating the impression that Trump's supporters are part of something grand and meaningful is a key element of his rhetoric. He constantly emphasizes that his movement is the greatest in history and that they are achieving significant changes together. This helps strengthen the sense of unity and moral superiority over opponents. Analysis. The sense of elitism and involvement in great changes effectively attracts people and creates a sense of mission. This strengthens supporters' loyalty and motivates them to act in the candidate's interest. 5. Evaluation of strengths and weaknesses of the speech. Strengths. Emotional connection with the audience. Trump actively uses patriotic symbols, simple slogans, and personal stories, which helps establish an emotional connection with the audience. Mobilization through fear and hope. He effectively uses the rhetoric of fear to motivate people to take action while simultaneously offering hope for a better future. Constant appeals to past achievements. Trump builds his campaign on comparing his past successes and the current failures, creating a convincing argument for the need for his return. Weaknesses. Polarization of society. The constant contrast between us and them can deepen societal divisions and worsen conflicts, which does not contribute to the long-term stabilization of the country. Simplification of complex issues. Trump's approach to discussing issues such as migration and international policy is often simplified and based on labels. This might appeal to some but repel more critically minded voters. Use of fear rhetoric. While fear is a powerful motivator, overusing it can lead to fatigue and anxiety among people, which could be counterproductive. 6. Visual and nonverbal elements of the speech. An integral part of any speech by Donald Trump is not only the words, but also the visual, nonverbal elements that help convey his message and establish a connection with the audience. Let's consider some interesting aspects of his nonverbal behavior. A. Gestures and body language. Trump actively uses gestures to emphasize key moments of his speech. Sweeping hand movements, pointing gestures, and raised fists convey energy, determination, and confidence. He often points to the audience as if addressing each person individually, creating a sense of closeness and significance for every listener. Effect on the audience. Trump's body language reinforces his words and gives the audience a feeling of confidence and security in his leadership. His energetic gestures generally strengthen his image as a strong leader who is ready to fight for the country's interests. B. Interaction with the audience. Trump doesn't just deliver a speech, he interacts with the attendees, calling out individual participants by name and responding to shouts from the crowd. This helps create the effect of a direct connection, which is especially important for a political leader who seeks to show his closeness to the people. Example, during his speech, Trump frequently asked rhetorical questions to the crowd, awaited responses, and commented on them. This interaction creates the impression of a live dialogue and strengthens the loyalty of the listeners. 7. Elements of a show and use of drama. Trump knows how to turn a political speech into a full-scale show, where his words, intonations, and even pauses play an important role. He uses dramatic pauses to heighten tension, especially when talking about future threats or the successes of his administration. Dramatic pauses and intonation. Trump often uses pauses at crucial moments in his speech. For instance, when he speaks about the potential catastrophic consequences if the current leadership remains in power, he pauses, allowing the audience to absorb the significance of what he said and fill the silence with their emotional reaction. Effect. The pauses create a dramatic atmosphere and allow his words to sink in with the audience. This makes his speech more convincing and emotionally impactful. B. Showmanship and staging. Trump often incorporates elements of staging to create a show effect. This includes the use of musical accompaniment, the choice of venue, in this case, a major manufacturing plant, and his appeals to people in the crowd. These elements make his speech an event, which distinguishes him from other political figures. 8. Approach to economic issues. Return to economic nationalism. Another interesting aspect of the speech is the particular emphasis on economic issues. Trump promotes the idea of economic nationalism, emphasizing the need to support domestic production and limit imports. He speaks about bringing manufacturing back to America, lowering taxes for those who create jobs within the country, and imposing tariffs on products made abroad. Political context. Economic nationalism is an important part of his political platform, aimed at attracting voters from the working class and small businesses. This rhetoric is designed to enhance confidence in future prosperity and restore economic order. 9. Comparisons with opponents and savior rhetoric. Trump portrays himself as the savior in contrast to the image of the destroyers he attributes to the current administration. He emphasizes that only he can bring order, restore the economy, and avoid catastrophe. This approach is very powerful as it appeals to basic human needs, security, and stability. A. The image of an all-capable leader. He tells stories about how he personally negotiated with world leaders and easily solved complex international problems, allowing him to appear as a strong leader capable of ensuring the nation's protection and prosperity. Effect. This technique helps reinforce Trump's image as an exceptional leader with unique qualities necessary for success, which is crucial for an electorate that is already disillusioned with the current leadership. 10. Appeal to universal values and the creation of the enemy image. Trump often resorts to creating enemies, both internal and external. In this speech, he criticizes illegal migrants, blaming them for crimes, and also attacks Biden and Harris, whom he describes as weak and destructive. This contrast helps form the perception that only with Trump can order be restored and enemies threatening America be eliminated. A. Polarization as a strategy. The strategy of polarization helps him mobilize his electorate, making the choice clear: either you support America's greatness with Trump or you support chaos and decline. This strategy works to create a black and white perception of the political situation, which helps avoid complex and ambiguous discussions and mobilizes emotional responses. Conclusion: Donald Trump's speech in Waunakee, Wisconsin, was typical of his style, with strong emotional notes aimed at patriotism, criticism of opponents, and the use of fear rhetoric for mobilization. It was aimed at maintaining and strengthening his base, drawing attention to threats, and highlighting the need for a change in leadership. His strategy can be assessed as successful in terms of mobilizing supporters, but carries the risk of further polarizing society.